Winter grips Vilnius, Lithuania, in the fading light of September 1941. Snow dusts the cobblestone streets like ash from distant fires, and the air carries the sharp tang of pine mixed with the acrid smoke of factory chimneys. German trucks rumble through the old city gates, their engines growling against the chill, unloading crates stamped with the eagle and swastika. In the shadow of the railway yards, a cluster of brick buildings rises, once a bustling industrial district, now the barbed wire perimeter of HKP 562, a forced labor camp for Jews. Guards in grey greatcoats patrol the fences, rifles slung low, their boots crunching frozen earth. Amid the arrivals stands Major Karl Plagge, a tall figure in Wehrmacht uniform, his face etched with the lines of a man who has seen too many orders signed in Berlin. At 42, Plagge commands this outpost of the Nazi war machine, tasked with turning out aircraft repair parts for the Luftwaffe. But as families are herded into the compound, mothers clutching children, fathers with tools in trembling hands, Plagge's eyes linger on a young mechanic named Zina, separated from her husband by the chaos. He pauses, then barks a quiet command to a subordinate, pulling her aside for essential work. In that moment, amid the shouts and the slam of gates, a flicker of defiance stirs. This camp, meant to grind lives into submission, becomes the stage for an officer's quiet rebellion against the regime he serves. The machinery of occupation whirs to life, but Plagge's choices will soon echo through the darkness of war. The year 1933 dawns over Germany like a gathering storm. Adolf Hitler ascends to power, his National Socialist Party promising renewal amid the ruins of the Great Depression. Factories hum with rearmament, unemployment plummets, but beneath the rallies and autobahns, a darker machinery assembles. Anti-Semitic laws cascade from the Reichstag. The Nuremberg laws of 1935 strip Jews of citizenship, bar them from professions, and mandate yellow stars for identification. By 1938, Kristallnacht shatters windows and lives across the nation, a prelude to expulsion. Karl Plagge, born in 1899 in Darmstadt to a middle-class family, navigates this rising tide as a pharmacist by trade. He joins the Nazi Party in 1931, drawn initially by economic promises and national pride, rising through the ranks to become a Sturmbannführer in the SA before transferring to the Wehrmacht in 1939. War erupts in September 1939 with the invasion of Poland. Blitzkrieg tactics overwhelm the Allies, France falls by June 1940, and Britain stands isolated. Plagge, now a major in the Medical Supply Corps, manages logistics for the expanding front. His unit procures materials, but whispers of the Einsatzgruppen, mobile killing squads, reach even supply depots. These SS units trail the Wehrmacht, executing Jews and intellectuals in occupied territories. Plagge witnesses the machinery of persecution firsthand during postings in occupied Poland, where ghettos form like cages in Warsaw and Lodz. Families are crammed into starving enclaves, rations cut to subsistence levels. Reports from the front detail mass shootings at sites like Babi Yar, where thousands perish in ravines. Yet Plagge, a decorated officer with a sense of duty forged in World War I, begins to question the orders filtering from Berlin. By 1941, Operation Barbarossa looms. Hitler eyes the Soviet Union, dreaming of Lebensraum, living space carved from Slavic lands. Plagge's unit prepares for the eastern push, stockpiling fuel and parts for the Luftwaffe's Messerschmitts and Junkers. The invasion launches on June 22, 1941, with 3 million Axis troops surging across the border. Tanks roar through the dust of Ukraine, Stukas dive-bombing resistance. Lithuania falls swiftly. Kaunas burns under partisan fire, but German forces secure Vilnius by late June. Here, the Wehrmacht establishes outposts, including forced labor camps to exploit local resources. Plagge arrives in Vilnius that summer, assigned to HKP 562, a Heereskraftfahrzeug park for vehicle and aircraft repair. The city, once a vibrant Jewish center with synagogues echoing Yiddish prayers, now pulses with occupation. Ghettos rise on the outskirts, barbed wire snaking through neighborhoods. Plagge's role demands efficiency, turn Jewish labor into war materiel. But as trucks ferry workers to the camp, he sees the human cost, emaciated faces, children orphaned by roundups. In the camp's dim workshops, lathes whine under dim bulbs, sparks flying from welders' torches. Plagge inspects the lines, noting skilled machinists like Avraham, a pre-war engineer now in striped rags. The major's orders emphasize output, but his interactions hint at restraint. He ensures minimal beatings, rations slightly above the bare minimum. Berlin's directives grow harsher. The Wannsee Conference in January 1942 formalizes the final solution, shifting from ghettos to extermination camps. Plagge receives memos on resettlement, code for death trains to Auschwitz. Lithuania's Jewish population, over 200,000 strong, dwindles rapidly. Vilnius alone loses 20,000 to Ponary forest massacres by summer 1941. Plagge, privy to SS reports, grapples with the scale. His pharmacy background, once dedicated to healing, now clashes with the regime's pathology. Autumn 1941 deepens the chill in Vilnius. The ghetto, divided into large and small sections, holds 40,000 souls behind walls patrolled by Lithuanian auxiliaries and German overseers. Daily selections cull the weak for labor or worse. Bodies pile in the streets during typhus outbreaks. HKP 562 expands, its brick barracks swelling with inmates from the ghetto. Plagge, as camp commandant, issues work permits, Schutzpässe, promising temporary safety for essential workers. These documents, stamped with his signature, become lifelines amid the deportations. The Wehrmacht's need for mechanics clashes with SS ambitions. Plagge leverages this friction, arguing that skilled labor sustains the front. By December 1941, Pearl Harbor draws America into the war, stretching German resources thin. The Eastern Front bogs down outside Moscow, winter claiming thousands. Plagge's command evolves subtly. He selects families over individuals, allowing wives like Zina to join husbands in the workshops. Children, hidden in corners during inspections, learn trades under the hum of engines. Survivor accounts later detail these acts. Plagge warning of impending Aktionen, roundups, giving hours to scatter. The camp's output rises, aircraft parts shipped to Stalingrad, but at a human toll. Guards enforce quotas with whips, yet Plagge intervenes quietly, reassigning the brutal to perimeter duty. The broader war context presses. In 1942, Rommel stalls in North Africa, and the US enters fully, bombing German cities. On the Eastern Front, the Red Army counterattacks at Stalingrad, tying down Plagge's Luftwaffe supplies. Vilnius becomes a microcosm of Nazi exploitation. The HKP camp, spanning several blocks near the train station, features machine shops, warehouses, and crude barracks. Inmates repair Focke-Wulf fuselages, their hands blackened by grease, eyes hollow from 12-hour shifts. Plagge walks the aisles daily, his presence a buffer against SS encroachments. He corresponds with Berlin, emphasizing productivity to shield his charges. By mid-1942, rumors of Treblinka's gas chambers filter through. Deportations accelerate. Plagge's moral fracture widens. He attends SS briefings, nods at orders, but in the camp, he forges protections. One evening, as snow falls on the wire, he tells a trusted aide, "This cannot stand," though no records capture the words exactly. The stage sets for defiance as the war's tide turns and the camp's fragile sanctuary teeters. These early safeguards plant seeds of resistance, drawing Plagge deeper into the fray as liquidation threats mount. Spring 1942 thaws the frozen earth around HKP 562, but the air in Vilnius remains thick with dread. Major Karl Plagge moves through the camp's machine shops, his polished boots echoing on concrete floors slick with oil. Lathes spin relentlessly, turning out propeller shafts for Heinkel bombers bound for the Eastern Front. The war's momentum shifts. German advances stall in the Caucasus, and Allied landings in North Africa force a two-front strain. Plagge receives urgent dispatches from Berlin. Production quotas doubled, no excuses. Yet in the workshops, his voice cuts through the din, steady and measured, as he assigns tasks to inmates like Avraham, whose skilled hands repair engines with pre-war precision. Efficiency saves lives. Plagge tells his deputies, a coded directive to curb excesses. Defiance builds in quiet layers. Plagge expands the Schutzpässe system, issuing over 1,000 permits by mid-1942, each naming families rather than isolates. These papers, embossed with official seals, grant indefinite essential employment, shielding bearers from ghetto roundups. Survivor testimonies, preserved in Yad Vashem archives, recount how Plagge handpicked mechanics, welders, and even children for apprenticeships, hiding them in attic spaces during SS visits. One such visit occurs in June 1942, when SS Obersturmführer Bruno Kittel arrives unannounced, his black uniform stark against the grey factory walls. Kittel demands a head count, eyes scanning for surplus workers. Plagge stands firm, unfolding ledgers that detail output surges, 20% above targets, arguing the camp's value to the Reich. Kittel departs empty-handed, but the tension lingers like cordite smoke. As summer heats the Baltic forests, deportations intensify. Trains loaded with 10,000 from the Vilnius ghetto rumble toward Treblinka in September, gas chambers claiming lives in hours. Plagge learns of the plans through Wehrmacht channels, his office desk piled with manifests. He acts covertly. Warnings slip to trusted inmates via notes in bread rations, urging them to memorize escape routes through the camp's rear fence, near the Vilnia River's muddy banks. One night in October, under a moon veiled by clouds, a group of 15, led by engineer Pesach, cuts the wire with smuggled shears. Plagge ensures guards look the other way, feigning a perimeter patrol elsewhere. They vanish into the woods, joining partisan bands in the Rudniki forest, where Soviet guerrillas harass supply lines. Plagge's inner conflict sharpens. At 43, with a career built on obedience, he risks court-martial for these interventions. Meetings with SS counterparts grow fraught. In November 1942, during a Vilnius command briefing, Plagge voices mild objections to labor reallocations, citing productivity losses. His subordinates notice the change: fewer floggings, medical supplies diverted to the sick. By December, as Stalingrad siege tightens and the Red Army encircles Paulus's Sixth Army, Plagge's camp becomes a fragile haven. Inmates like Zina, reunited with her family through his permits, sew uniforms in hidden corners, their whispers carrying hopes of liberation. The major walks the barbed perimeter at dusk, rifle shots echoing from distant ghettos, his resolve hardening against the tide of orders demanding total compliance. These acts of calculated mercy strain the camp's seams, setting the stage for the storm that will test Plagge's limits in the year ahead. March 1943 brings a bitter wind sweeping across Vilnius, rattling the chain-link fences of HKP 562 like skeletal warnings. The Eastern Front fractures. German retreats from Stalingrad leave 91,000 survivors in Soviet captivity, and the Battle of Kursk looms as the war's largest tank clash. Resources dwindle. Plagge's workshops scramble to salvage wrecked Ju-52 transports, their fuselages scarred by anti-aircraft fire. Inmates work by lantern light, fingers numb from cold, producing parts that fuel a desperate defense. But SS directives from Berlin escalate. Göring's orders mandate the total mobilization of Jewish labor, funneling all able-bodied to extermination sites. Plagge receives the cable in his Spartan office. HKP 562 slated for partial liquidation, non-essential workers to be resettled east. The date: September 14, 1943. His hand tightens on the paper, the room's single bulb casting long shadows on maps pinned to the wall. Preparations unfold in secrecy. Plagge convenes his inner circle, loyal sergeants who share his unease, mapping escape vectors under the guise of inventory checks. He forges additional Schutzpässe, distributing them to over 200 families, each permit a brittle shield against the Gestapo's grasp. Survivor accounts, documented in post-war trials, describe frantic nights, children concealed in tool crates, women taught to pose as Aryan cleaners. Plagge himself intervenes during a spot inspection, pulling aside a mother and infant from the selection line, assigning them to administrative duties in the supply depot. The camp buzzes with suppressed fear, whispers of Ponari's killing pits, where 70,000 have already perished, circulate like fog. On September 13th, as rain lashes the rooftops, Plagge addresses the assembled workers at dawn roll call. His voice, calm amid the downpour, stresses quotas met and bonuses implied, but his eyes signal the peril. Liquidation erupts at first light on the 14th. SS trucks screech into the compound, black-clad troops spilling out with dogs straining at leashes. Bruno Kittel, now promoted, directs the action with clipped efficiency, herding 2,500 inmates toward waiting cattle cars. Shouts pierce the air, boots thudding on wet gravel as families are torn apart. Plagge stands at the gates, uniform sodden, protesting the disruption to production, delaying trucks by hours with fabricated paperwork. In the chaos, escapes ignite. Groups of 50, coordinated by Plagge's aides, slip through a pre-cut gap in the southern fence toward the Narok Forest's partisan havens. Gunfire cracks as guards pursue, but many melt into the underbrush, guided by smuggled compasses. Zina, clutching her forged papers, leads her kin through a drainage culvert, emerging on the riverbank where Lithuanian sympathizers wait with forged IDs. The climax peaks in the camp's heart. As trains groan under load, bound for Weihwasser transit camp and ultimately Auschwitz, Plagge confronts Kittel directly. These workers are vital, he insists, ledger in hand, amid the wails of the separated. Kittel sneers. But Plagge's Wehrmacht rank buys time. 200 permits honored, saving that core group on site. By dusk, smoke rises from burning records, the camp halved in hours. Over 1,000 deported that day, but Plagge's network yields results. Post-war estimates credit his interventions with 250 direct survivals, including escapes to Sweden via underground rails. The Major watches the last convoy depart, taillights fading into the night, his face a mask of controlled anguish. Partisans later ambush a supply train in reprisal, but the cost mounts. Guards double. Trust erodes. In the liquidation's wake, Plagge's gamble exposes the human cracks in the Nazi edifice, propelling the remnants toward uncertain fates as the war hurtles onward. September 1943 fades into a Vilnius autumn scarred by the HKP 562 liquidation, leaves swirling like discarded Schutzpässe in the wind-swept yards. The camp stands diminished, its machine shops echoing with the ghosts of departed workers, half-empty benches covered in dust. Major Karl Plagge resumes command of the skeletal operation, now reduced to 300 essential inmates under intensified guard. Production limps, aircraft parts trickle to the Luftwaffe amid Allied bombings that shake the horizon. But Plagge's focus shifts to survival. He rations the remaining food stores, diverting Red Cross parcels meant for Germans to the barracks, where typhus claims a dozen lives before winter sets in. Survivor testimonies, gathered by the Jewish Historical Institute in the 1950s, detail his persistence. Nightly checks on hidden families, forged medical excuses to exempt the ill from labor. Escapes bear fruit in the shadows. Those who fled on the 14th, over 200 strong, link with Bielski partisans in the Naliboki forest, their numbers swelling to 1,200 by 1944. Armed with scavenged rifles, they sabotage rail lines, derailing a munitions train near Lida in October 1943, exploding 20 cars of ammunition. Zina and her group reach a safe house in Kaunas, then cross into neutral Sweden by early 1944 via a Baltic smuggling route, their forged papers stamped by Plagge's aides. Lithuanian collaborators, tipped by camp insiders, shelter others in rural barns, where they endure until Soviet liberation in July 1944. The Red Army's Vilnius offensive, part of Operation Bagration, crushes German defences. Tanks roll through the streets, freeing the ghetto's last 2,000 souls. Plagge, anticipating the tide, prepares his charges, distributing civilian clothes and maps of partisan zones. Plagge's personal reckoning arrives swiftly. In late September 1943, SS investigators summon him to Riga for questioning on labor mismanagement. He faces a tribunal led by Gestapo chief Franz Stahlecker, accused of sabotage through excessive protections. Plagge defends with ledgers showing output quotas met, but suspicions linger. His promotion stalls, and surveillance tightens. By November, as the Wehrmacht retreats from the Dnieper River, Plagge transfers to a rear echelon post in Königsberg, leaving HKP under a harsher commandant. Inmates later report beatings resuming, though Plagge's groundwork saves pockets, a final 50 escape in coordinated dashes before his departure. The major carries the weight in silence, his letters home, censored and sparse, hinting at moral fatigue. As 1944 unfolds, D-Day lands in Normandy, and the Soviets push west. Plagge witnesses the Reich's unraveling from supply depots, the war's human ledger closing on his hidden acts. These immediate salvations weave a thread of resilience through the camp's ruins, binding Plagge's choices to the broader collapse of Nazi control in the East. Winter 1944 cloaks Europe in ice as the Red Army surges toward Berlin, its artillery thundering like judgment on the crumbling Reich. Karl Plagge, reassigned to administrative duties in East Prussia, oversees dwindling supply lines amid the chaos of retreat. Civilian refugees clog the roads, and Soviet partisans harry German convoys, but Plagge's thoughts drift to Vilnius. In April 1945, as Allied forces converge, he surrenders to advancing Americans near the Elbe River, his uniform threadbare after 6 years of service. Interrogated in a makeshift camp, Plagge recounts his career factually, logistics officer, camp commandant, but omits the protections, fearing reprisal from lingering Nazis. The Allies, focused on high-ranking war criminals, release him by summer, classifying him as a low-level functionary. He returns to Darmstadt, a city bombed to rubble, and resumes civilian life as a pharmacist, his war experiences buried under reconstruction. Post-war revelations surface slowly. In 1946, Nuremberg trials exposed the Holocaust's machinery, Wannsee protocols, Einsatzgruppen reports. But Plagge's name emerges peripherally through survivor affidavits. Malka, a HKP escapee now in Israel, testifies in 1947 to a Zionist commission. Plagge was our shield without his papers. We were ash. By the 1950s, as West Germany grapples with Vergangenheitsbewältigung, coming to terms with the past, investigations into Wehrmacht complicity intensify. Plagge faces scrutiny in 1958 from a Frankfurt denazification board. Witnesses, including former subordinates, describe his interventions. Delayed deportation saving 250 lives directly, per Yad Vashem estimates. He admits selective obedience, stating in records, "I could not be party to murder," earning a mitigated verdict. No prison, but a fine and loss of pension. The Holocaust's toll crystallizes. 6 million Jews perished. Lithuania's 95% annihilation rate, a stark statistic. Long-term impacts ripple outward. Survivors like Avraham, who reached Palestine in 1945, found families and industries, crediting Plagge in memoirs published in the 1960s. The Bielski partisans, bolstered by HKP escapees, inspire films and books. Their 200-strong O-triad, a testament to improvised resistance. Plagge lives quietly until 1957, dying of heart failure at 58, his grave unmarked in Darmstadt. Recognition dawns posthumously. In 1999, Yad Vashem honors him as righteous among the nations, the first Wehrmacht officer so designated, based on 50 survivor depositions. Ceremonies in Vilnius and Jerusalem draw descendants, unveiling plaques at HKP's site, now a memorial park. The event shifts narratives. Not all in uniform were villains. Plagge's case highlights moral fissures in the Nazi hierarchy, influencing histories like Christopher Browning's Ordinary Men. Strategically, his actions underscore labor camp inefficiencies, contributing to overextended German logistics that hastened defeat. These delayed reckonings illuminate the human variables in total war, forging Plagge's legacy as a quiet counterpoint to atrocity's roar. The snows of Vilnius have long melted into the rivers of time, carrying away the echoes of HKP 562's barbed wires and workshop hums. Major Karl Plagge's story, woven into the vast tapestry of World War II's horrors, stands as a solitary thread of moral clarity amid the Reich's machinery of death. In an era where obedience was exalted and dissent equated with treason, Plagge chose the harder path, not through grand gestures, but through the quiet issuance of a permit, the averted gaze of a guard, the whispered warning in the night. His actions saved over 250 lives, a fraction against the 6 million lost, yet they revealed the fragility of evil's hold. One officer's conscience could fracture the system, enabling escapes that fueled partisan fires and preserved families for a post-war world. This case reshapes our understanding of the Holocaust's human landscape. It challenges the binary of perpetrator and victim, showing how individuals within the Nazi apparatus navigated ethical abysses. Plagge's pharmacy oath, to do no harm, clashed with the regime's pathology, echoing broader themes in warfare's evolution. Technology's cold efficiency, from gas chambers to assembly lines, demands personal reckoning. His posthumous honor by Yad Vashem in 1999 underscores a legacy of quiet heroism, reminding us that history's turning points often hinge on unseen choices. In the end, as the war's scars fade on Europe's map, Plagge's defiance endures as a beacon, proof that even in the darkest command, humanity can flicker through.